Welcome to the Love Now Movement interview series hosted by Australian powerhouse spiritual teacher Susie Mazzoli. Together with a New York filmmaker Kevin Lewis, presents cutting-edge information in the field of consciousness, spirituality, science, and culture. We present in-depth interviews with the international movers and shakers, agents of change, and explore our rapid, expanded world. Come and join us on our Love Now across the world.
What is it that you actually do call yourself? Because I was like looking at like, now how do I introduce Michael Tellinger? And what kept coming up for me was man of integrity. This was like,
I'm going to leave it up to you.
I'm going to call you man of integrity.
I don't want to tell you what to call me. Then it's been I don't know, whatever the right word is, disingenuous or forceful.
Mm-hmm.
So just.
Well, obviously you've done a huge amount of research, and you've really done so much work to bring peace and truth into the world. So my label for you is man of integrity, because everything else just seems like a lesser than, because what you've done is so profound and powerful, and you've really brought so much information to the world. So I thank you, and I'm really honoured. I'm very blessed, and we all thank you, all of our team. Thank you so much for letting the Love Now Movement interview you. And welcome to New York.
Oh, thanks so much, Susie. It's great, and I feel honoured. Thank you for the title you just bestowed on me. I may use it.
Yes.
And I may quote you in times of need.
Maybe we should have a great big sword and knight you while we're here.
but you realise, obviously, that I'm not alone in this. You know, I mean, obviously, Louise plays a very important part in this.
Yes.
And since we've been together, I've grown tremendously in the depth of my own introspection and consciousness,
mm-hmm.
and questioning my own motives and integrity and so forth. So I guess all that is, we all have a role to play.
Mm-hmm.
And
when did you start playing this role? When was that like aha moment when you realized that the reality that you were growing up with was perhaps a little bit different? When was that like blast?
Yeah. Different things on different levels,
mm-hmm.
From the earliest age, from being 5, 6 years old, realizing certain things. And
what was going on then? You were in South Africa then?
No, actually, I was born in Europe. I was born in the Czech Republic.
Oh, really? Where?
In a town called Karlovy Vary, or as the Germans call Carlsbad.
Yes.
A very beautiful town.
Yes.
And we moved to South Africa
mm-hmm.
as a result of the Russian invasion in 1968.
So your family's actually Czech?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But I haven't really spent any time in the Czech Republic
mm-hmm.
or Czechoslovakia then.
Well, it's so funny because, my family's Hungarian, and I spent all those years working for George Soros in Eastern Europe, bringing down that great big Soviet republic.
Yeah. Well, my father speaks Hungarian, so I grew up with Hungarian spoken around me quite often with my father's Hungarian friends, and it's a beautiful language. I always remember it's like beautiful open vowels and just a stunning language.
Yeah, very hard language.
Yeah, very hard. Yeah. So, but and then in South Africa, growing up under apartheid in a privileged gold mining community, gave me a very interesting perspective on life.
You were living in a gold mining. They were still mining gold then.
Oh yeah, they're mining gold. I mean, South Africa is still, I think, mines more gold than anybody else. I believe China now apparently mines
mm-hmm.
the most gold on the planet, but for a long time, most
mm-hmm.
of the gold came out of South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up on the gold fields,
west
of Johannesburg, all about the gold.
Right. And when was that moment where you realised that this gold mining was actually connected to our very ancient history, perhaps?
That came a lot later, already when I was in my 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And so about 23 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And what work were you doing?
I studied pharmaceutics when
mm-hmm.
I left school. I went to Wits University, which you probably know, in Johannesburg,
mm-hmm.
the big university in South Africa. And I studied pharmaceutics there at the medical school, and while I was studying that, I obviously realized already then that there was something amiss with what we know about physiology, anatomy,
mm-hmm.
Molecular biology, genetics. I started questioning a lot of that stuff.
What was it? What was it that was amiss?
Just why do cells die? Why do we age? A very simple question that
mm-hmm.
no lecturer can answer. Well,
mm-hmm.
we don't know. That's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's a standard answer. That's just the way it is. We die.
Right.
So no, that's not the way it is. If the cell has to, renew itself every so many days and every so many weeks, and different cells that renew themselves quicker than others in your body, and so why does it stop? Why do you grow up, and when you reach maturity, suddenly you go through this process, and suddenly you start aging, and eventually you die?
Right.
What's on with that? So there's some sort of a trigger mechanism that causes us to die, and then genetics, the fact that we know so little about our DNA. That just blew my mind. How is it that this thing that controls us, that we know absolutely nothing about? And that's really what started driving me to ask more questions. And the origins of humankind, evolution versus creation, suddenly realizing, hold on, this whole thing about evolution that's been shoved down our throats suddenly became very obvious a distraction away from the creation. So we went from an overtly religious community, especially here in America, that believe in creation, to evolution shoved down people's throats. Darwin is right, and then suddenly realizing, but that's not necessarily so. There are huge problems with Darwin's theories, and that have been shown up by many researchers.
Right.
And even he himself wasn't very sure that he was right. And yet there's a huge amount of genetic evidence that we've been manipulated, our DNA has been manipulated and spliced.
So when was it? When was that moment when you realised that we have been manipulated? What information came to you, or what did you see?
It was a process. It doesn't happen. You reach a stage where you go, hold on, something is wrong with this picture.
Right.
And I no longer believe what I used to believe, or what I was taught at school.
Right.
And when that happens, I think that's when everything shifts. Because suddenly you start to distrust what you were taught at school, and you start looking for alternative information and new information, and that's when you start finding the researchers and the scientists, of whom there are thousands, that have researched and written about this subject, and you start getting into this subject matter and realizing, oh my goodness, there's so much information. Why is this not taught at school? And then you smell even a bigger rat. There's obviously a hidden agenda here. They want to shove disinformation down our throats.
Right.
And then you start connecting more dots. So that was a process, and when it really happened for me is probably in not very long ago, in the early 2000s, probably from about 2001 to 2005.
And when you refer to the they now, who is that they that you're talking about?
The elite group that is trying to, keep this planet under control and enslave humanity.
They are human, non-human?
Both, human and non-human. The more you look into it, the more obvious it becomes that the technology that we use, the way that the legal systems have been woven together over thousands of years. This is not something that happened overnight. Right. Our legal system is so convoluted, it's insane. So this is something that's evolved over probably about 6,000 years, from the early Sumerian days, and those were influenced by the Anunnaki, and who knows what other ETs were influencing them at that stage, or have since then influenced them to write the kind of legal systems that enslave humanity today. The they, I guess, is a small group of elite human beings, or whatever you want to call them, the Illuminati, the chosen ones, the royal bloodlines. They have many names. The banksters, who I think in many ways are just the front for a lot of these beings. And the absolute enslavement of planet Earth, and enslavement of the species for reasons that are becoming more and more mysterious.
To you?
To me, and I believe that many researchers that are doing this are finding, I guess what I'm finding as well, that the reasons for the enslavement are not as simple as we originally may have thought. Which was just, possibly they were interested in the gold, they wanted to mine the gold, so they came to this planet, and I'm referring to the Anunnaki now, they came to the planet to mine the gold.
Especially in Africa?
Especially in Africa, well, that's where they found the gold, and set up this vast gold mining operation, and that's really where I come in, and I present the physical evidence of that. And so there can be no more argument whether it was there or not. There's definitely one of the first gold mining settlements on Earth, larger than anyone could have ever imagined. But then it gets into other interesting things, like, are they actually interested in the gold for what are the reasons they're interested in the gold for, and it's used as a tool to keep the human enslavement going as a commodity, and at the same time, it seems more and more evident that human energy, or the energy that we create as living, breathing human beings, is a source of energy and an addiction for certain ETs. And this is actually what I'm going to present tonight in my presentation.
Not just addiction, but it's actually a source of food. It's a nutritional source. It's a life source, literally. So we would be a life source to another form of being, which is what the Matrix movies are about, and so much of Hollywood feeding us all the time.
We are the batteries.
So let me jump forward, because I know you have a tremendous amount of really amazing footage on YouTube where you show images and speak about all of our composite history, I'll just call it that, on YouTube, so people can have a look at that. It's amazing material. What do you think that we as spiritual people, as people that have become aware of this information, what do you think we can do?
Well, I think what's happening is that the conscious community around the world is starting to merge. I think that the evidence, and that's certainly what Louise and I felt on this trip, the fourth tour.
We're coming together. The oneness movement.
Very much so. It's because
we find out we're actually all related too. Like my grandmother probably knew your grandmother, who knew your grandmother, right?
But what I find fascinating is that the divide and conquer principle is one of the things that they use against humans to divide and conquer us and keep us in fear and enslaved, and in ways that I guess the majority of the planet has not yet figured out.
Right, the duality principle.
But the divide and conquer and the fear-mongering that goes on. But what's happening now, and it's very obvious, is that those divisions of separation in the New Age community and the spiritual and the life worker community are being broken down, and the people are connecting. And we saw that at Contact in the Desert. In Joshua Tree. It was a great example of that. And it's the first time, apparently, according to the organizers, that the individual speakers that in the past would have been very protective of their knowledge and information and very isolated themselves and so forth, suddenly were completely the opposite, prepared to share information and sit on panels and share information that previously apparently they would not do. So we're seeing definite signs of those walls of division breaking down or being broken down, and I believe it's our consciousness that is breaking those divisions.
So like the possession principle? Right.
So to answer your question, and maybe slightly to add to that, is what must we do, what should people do, and so forth. That is really what the conclusion of my research regarding the ancient civilizations and the vanished civilizations of South Africa and Southern Africa is all about. Once we've learned what these guys were up to a long time ago, how humanity has been manipulated for around 300,000 years, and who knows what happened before that, but let's just talk about the last 300,000 years or so, and how we've been manipulated and genetically, abused and so forth, and completely and utterly enslaved. What we learn from that as well is what we should not continue doing.
Right.
So that's what I find really exciting.
So what is that?
We're learning what we should do in the future by getting some very incredible information of the activity of the past. And that is that money is the thing that was introduced as a tool of enslavement.
Everyone uses it.
And it's as the guys in Zeitgeist say, it's become an unspoken religion.
Yes.
And nobody questions it. They just expect that it's always been there and it always will be there. Well, that's not true. It has not always been there. And this is what you find out when you start looking at the origins of humankind and how the Anunnaki have manipulated this thing called money. And it seems to be very clear to me now that it is the Anunnaki that actually introduced the concept of money.
So for many people that are possibly watching this video, they don't know who the Anunnaki is. Could you give just a very brief description?
Yeah, Anunnaki are our creators, our progenitors, our genetic donors, and the splicers of our DNA, who created us as a new species to be the primitive worker, or as they call it, as we are called in the Sumerian tablets, as the Lulu Amelu, the primitive worker, to take the toil of the back of the Anunnaki and work in the gold mines in the Abzu, which is southern Africa, where this vast gold mining operation was set up.
And you're saying that all humans now on the planet are from the Anunnaki race?
I'm not saying that all of them are. There definitely seems to be, because of the different race groups that we have on planet Earth. That in itself is a big question, right? Where do the different race groups come from, and how did that happen? When did that happen? Because when do Chinese people start giving birth to black babies, or vice versa? And that is not a simple answer as we are often told. Oh, it's just this and that. That's not that simple, actually.
The mutant gene.
Yeah, exactly. And that is completely it's a lie.
Yeah.
But most people swallow it. So the Anunnaki were looking for gold, and they came to planet Earth, and they found gold on planet Earth. And they started mining it around 500,000 years ago. I'm not saying that's where the Anunnaki started on planet Earth. They may have been active here a long time before that in various ways, because it's now becoming clear that the Anunnaki have been doing things around the universe for much, much longer than that. And they've been doing what they did to planet Earth, or what they did on planet Earth, to many other planets. I have no idea how many, but probably a lot of other planets that they did similar stuff. And the Anunnaki are well described in the Sumerian texts. There's huge amounts of information about the Anunna gods and Anu, Enlil, and Enki, the three primary Anunnaki. And that's where the story really begins for us as human beings. But that's not the full story. That's just our story, and from which we're just waking up. And it's a very exciting story.
So as we're waking up, we're recognizing that we have this DNA inside us, that it is part of us. Yeah,
we have a DNA that is being specifically put into us to be able to rise in consciousness. And this is the interesting thing, that for a long time I believed that the opposite was true, that we were cloned purely as a primitive species, but that's not really true. And in fact, some of Sitchin's translations refer to it as well, and I'm referring to Zachariah Sitchin here. And where the creator god, who in Sumeria is known as Enki, and interestingly enough, in African tradition, he is known as Enkai, the creator of the human race, according to Credo Mutwa.
Yes.
And just to create that connection, that this is not something that's just known in one ancient culture, it's actually a common denominator in most ancient cultures.
South American as well, similar descriptions of the wind gods.
So what's becoming more and more interesting for me now is that the Anunnaki, and especially Enki, because there seems to be this duality between Enlil and Enki, the two brothers, the one who just wanted to create a dumb species to help them with the gold mining, and when the gold mining was done, just wipe the species out and move on to another planet, or something like that. I'm simplifying it really grossly, but while Enki felt that wasn't his plan, and while doing the genetic manipulation, and this seems to have gone on for a long time. This didn't just happen very quickly. They experimented with a lot of different clones and hybrids of humans and animals and all kinds of stuff that we seem to find evidence in mythology. Exactly. And
religion.
And religion. So, and it's at that point that I believe something very interesting happened, is that Enki encoded the new species with enough DNA to allow them to, or us, should I say, to rise to very high levels of consciousness. And
when we reach a certain point in our galactic turn, though, cycle, so that there is a trigger of the solar,
right. But you have to have the capacity in the DNA to be able to deliver the program, or compute that, or transfer the information from the morphogenic field to transfer and create the feedback program from the DNA to the brain to start kicking in the rise of the consciousness. And I think this is what Enki did. And until recently, I didn't understand why this happened. And it's becoming very. I feel very strongly about this. Well, let me rephrase it. I resonate very strongly with the philosophy that Enki understood very clearly what the Star Trek writers have been calling the prime directive.
Right.
and he knew exactly.
Butt out, right?
Yeah. Well, I can't just create a species that we will abuse and then destroy. If we're going to create a species, we need to imbue it with the potential of or the components of infinite potentiality. Otherwise, I am breaching the prime directive. I'm interfering in the evolution ability of a species.
And self-awareness.
And self-awareness and all that. So I think this is the stage that we're at now. I guess many people have been at that stage already of recognition of consciousness for long before us. The great masters have been teaching us this for many thousands of years.
And what about all the other various species that we work with? I especially work with the Pleiadians. So what about all those other forms of life?
Well,
or forms of consciousness, I should say,
yeah. It seems to me that there have been many species that have been doing various things on planet Earth.
And interacting the DNA as well, or helping.
I guess so. You know,
letting the guys out of jail.
It's difficult to say exactly what happened when, because they're different people writing different things. And at this stage, the stories are almost sympathetic, but they're still different people with different versions of what they believe happened and how the Pleiadians interacted and what they did when, so there isn't.
What's your read on them, on the Pleiadians?
Well, to me, the Pleiadians sound like the very high conscious beings who had a very different plan for planet Earth, and that plan was destroyed by other beings. That's my take on it.
Do you see them as being present now, as coming in and doing work here?
That's the information that I get from people that do channeling.
Do you feel it yourself, or do you have a sense of...
I do feel it. I feel...
you can't tell me that you're not also receiving information directly, yeah? You must be.
I do, but my connection seems to be Anunnaki connection. Very strong Anunnaki connection.
As in they are speaking directly to you?
Well, I get information, I download information of things that I didn't understand before. Suddenly I get absolute clarity on how things work or how it probably happened, and then I go and research it and I look into it and I find, oh, that's exactly what others have been writing about or channeling or sharing that information, and I just sort of download it in a few seconds. And
is it a lot of technological information?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's technological.
It's interesting. As you're speaking, you know, my work at the channel is very visual sometimes, and as you're speaking about the connection, you're actually becoming very blurry.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is interesting.
Wow.
Do you ever get a sense of time shifting, or do you ever feel like you're going through wormholes things like that?
I do sense when I actually connect and I start to download information, I've become aware of it now. Because I'm a very insensitive bastard. I've been told.
Right.
But maybe that's a protection thing.
Right.
I believe it is, actually.
Well, that's just the Anunnaki bloodline. Right?
Yeah.
Well, they say that's the difference.
Yes.
That's the difference, is that to recognise that type of... Do you also use the word reptilian when you use Anunnaki or not?
No, I don't believe Anunnaki are reptilian at all.
Okay, so is the Anunnaki, do you consider that a being that is not capable of compassion?
No, they are capable of compassion.
They are, okay.
And this is where we need to differentiate between the different levels of Anunnaki, because there's not just one group of Anunnaki.
We can't just generalise about them like about Americans.
Just like, exactly, you know. They're compassionate Americans and they're bloodthirsty Americans. Same thing.
Right.
And the Anunnaki are the same. And it seems that those that came to Earth a long time ago and started laying the foundation for the control systems that we are experiencing now, more and more draconian type of control, and specifically the offspring of the Anunnaki, not the senior, maybe more conscious, if you want to call them that. And remember that the Anunnaki have been around for a lot longer than we have, so they've also been rising in consciousness.
Because that is the natural
order of things.
It is natural,
yeah.
Right?
You can't stop that.
So I can still have hope.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
you can.
Right,
Have
okay.
hope. Maybe one day you too will be conscious.
We hope so. I hope we are all doing that in the same way. So I'm going to. Sorry, it's so fascinating speaking to you. So I'll try and come back then. So with the Anunnaki, your understanding is that there are different levels of being, different levels of consciousness. That you are in direct relationship to
I
the
seem to
Anunnaki.
have a very strong contact to Enki. I have Enki energy and Enki connection and Enki information that I get, and that's I've been told this so many times now by channelers and psychics and dowsers and people that are far more in tune or connected than I am. And
why do you have that? What do you see as the...
Let's rather reverse the question. I have it because I'm supposed to bring the information about the Anunnaki activity in South Africa to the fore.
To the world.
To the world, and that's what I'm doing.
Because
and so I was given that connection. I was put there so that because I would recognize it easier than others, and therefore I'm talking about it while everyone else is still talking about cattle kraal and and cattle enclosures.
What are those things that you believe, and I know with the incredible work you've done with UBUNTU Party, so congratulations for that in South Africa. Wow, amazing work. How do we do it? What do we do? What are you doing? What are you telling people? Because you have the ears of thousands, hundreds and thousands of people. What are you telling them?
Well, first of all, let's just go back a little bit. The enslavement thing is critical because people need to realize the level of enslavement.
That they are enslaved.
That they are enslaved.
Yeah.
And it's only when you come to terms with that and that you don't fight it anymore, because the ego is so strong and so powerful. I'm not enslaved, I have free will, I can do what I want. No, you can't. Just when people say that, you've got to just strike back immediately and say you don't have free will. You think you have free will. And let me just remind those that none are more enslaved than those who believe that they are free. And that's a huge problem. So we got to get to those people that have big egos and that live this life of money and wealth, or even if they don't have money or wealth or powerful positions and they believe they have free will and they're masters of their own destiny, that is not the case. That the entire life is controlled by people they've never met and never heard of, and they never will meet or never will hear of.
And they're not even people, maybe.
And they're not even people.
Yeah.
So the thing that I've been sharing with the people as I travel around the world is that we're enslaved, and I've identified the 4 levels of enslavement now. First of all, we're enslaved physically because we are cloned species to be a slave, to be slaves in the gold mines. Then we're enslaved mentally because we're very confused about this and we can't really compute. It doesn't make any sense to us because of the way that we've been brought up in the education system and our whole history and the lies of history. We're enslaved emotionally because it really hurts, and because we're deeply emotional beings, and yet we have the DNA potential to be absolute co-creators of the universe. And that is where we actually need to end up with what I'm mentioning now, that's our divine destiny, to become co-creators as we are infinite fractals of the divine source.
Right.
So that is the enslavement on an emotional and mental level, that information being suppressed, and physically. And then finally, we also, as a 4th kind of enslavement, we're enslaved spiritually, because our souls seem to be trapped in this reality on this planet. And it takes sometimes many thousands of lifetime reincarnations of learning what's really going on and understanding this enslavement, only to realize what I now call reaching a full moment of enlightenment. Because only once you come to terms with the fact that we're enslaved on these 4 different levels, that you reach a stage of enlightenment, and you can then choose to do something about it. Because, I've asked many people that have studied this stuff for a long time, what is enlightenment? And I've had all kinds of definitions thrown at me. But they're just words, other definitions for enlightenment. But they don't actually explain what it is.
Right.
So I've now formulated this definition for enlightenment as a result of my research, that enlightenment seems to be, and I'm not at all saying that this is what it is. This is how I understand it now. It is when we come to terms that we're enslaved in all possible ways that you can become enlightened, because only then you twigged on what's going on, and you can make a decision yourself that you're no longer going to be enslaved in any of those ways. And let me just define the last enslavement, which I refer to, which is the this enslavement spiritually, because it seems that when our souls leave our bodies, when we die, and the soul wants to go back to source, or wants to reconnect with source, or whatever souls do when they leave your body, they can't do what they want to do. They seem to be trapped through this energetic field around planet Earth, which I've been referring to as a karmic trap. And the Anunnaki seem to be the architects of this energetic field and a karmic trap for souls. And this is a spectacular atrocity. And I've heard certain information about the Anunnaki and how they've been perceived for what they've done on this planet. And it's been said that the Anunnaki have created a great sin against all of creation, and for that they've been cast out of the book of life by higher beings of consciousness. And this is an interesting thing, and I was wondering for a long time what that great sin against all of creation could be, until I figured out, based on some research from the Sumerian tablets, what the Anunnaki, Anu, Enlil, and Enki were up to here. And it seems to me that they're the ones that created this karmic trap that is often referred to as the rules by the US military and Air Force, and these energetic fields that seem to be around planet Earth, and that seem to have always been there for thousands of years.
And have captured other beings as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, when people jump up and down when they hear me say this, oh no, how can you say a karmic trap? Karma is a natural order of things. Just be very careful when you say that. Karma is a natural order of things in a free will universe.
Which is linear based too.
We don't exist in a free will universe.
Right.
Our free will has been suppressed.
Yeah.
And that includes the will of our souls to reconnect with source. And I know that Ashiana Dean, for example, refers to it as blank slate technology, or the BST,
right,
which sometimes could be referred to as the beast.
Yeah.
So your soul gets fried, it gets stripped of all its soul memory, and you get thrown back as this completely ignorant soul of no knowledge of your past lives, of no understanding who you are and what you should be doing here,
Yeah.
going through another lifetime of experiences of learning things that you don't really know why you should be learning.
Yeah.
And my answer to that is, it is an insane suggestion that our souls, as infinite fractals of the divine source, could ever forget what they are. So if you're going to choose to reincarnate, you will do so at your own time, at your own leisure, at your own soul decision, and you will do so with full memory of all your past lives, why you're coming back, what experiences you want to experience this time around, and so forth. Not be completely ignorant as to why you're here, and only discover this when you're about to kick the bucket.
Right. There are some other beings from other dimensions or other locations in our distant universe that call this a prison planet.
Yes.
That's the same
exactly,
type of thing?
yeah, prison planet on those 4 levels.
Yeah.
Physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually.
Right.
And this is the key thing, and I think this is what the Buddha and the Christ and Krishna and all these other great teachers of the past, I think that's what they were talking about when they spoke about enlightenment. To reach enlightenment, you first need to realize how enslaved and how entrapped you are to free yourself.
Yes.
And that we have the potential, or we are beings of infinite divinity. It's in our DNA. In fact, the science of genetics, the most recent understanding of what our DNA actually is, and how it connects to the morphogenic field, actually shows us that our bodies are made to be light beings. We are light bodies.
We're just made of photons.
Yes, and that we're actually made for multidimensional travel.
We are.
Yes.
Yes, you and I are everywhere right now.
Our bodies
Yes.
are made up to do that.
Yeah.
But this is why the enslavement of the human race has to be so draconian right now, because the slave has outgrown its creator in consciousness.
Yes.
Now, not all the creators are applying the draconian measures. It's only those that, or it seems to be those that were left behind on this planet to run the affairs and got stuck and got caught up in in dealings and wheelings with other ETs with ill intent, while the others who left and carried on exploring and growing in their own consciousness reached much higher levels of consciousness and higher dimensional levels, and now look back at what's going on this planet and realize that they started the problem. And I'm referring to the Anunnaki now, and the Enlil and Enki and Anu Trinity, if you want to call them that. Realizing, oh my goodness, what have we done there? Now, and I see it like, I look at sometimes, things I did in high school, and I go, oh my goodness, how could I have done that? And I feel ashamed. If I could go back and fix it, I would. Well, they can come back and fix it, and I think that's what's happening now, because humanity is
the Anunnaki coming back now to fix it.
Fix the problems.
That's what you're saying?
Yeah. They are part of the beings of higher consciousness, not just the Pleiadians and the Andromedans or whoever else is coming, it sounds like they're getting on some ships. And
I think some of them actually are, yeah.
Look, I believe some of them are, but I'm talking about beings of very high levels of consciousness, multidimensional beings that they don't travel on spaceships. Right. They just materialize and they go to work through
those are the ones that I know.
Yes.
They just appear.
They just appear, and they work through subtle energies because the universe is filled with subtle energy, not hardcore Newtonian physics kind of energy that we get taught at school. Yeah. So the changes are so subtle that most of us aren't even aware of them, and I do believe that the very high level Anunnaki, if you want to call them leadership or beings, are here. They're not on their way. They are here, and they're working very actively to change and fix and correct the mistakes or correct the outcome of what they started, and shift it. And
they are setting humanity free.
Yeah,
that's what you're saying.
That's what's happening, and I think there's no doubt that's going on. That I certainly feel it.
So as these so-called gods that created us in the beginning are setting us free, what is it that you think people like just us, like everyday people, what do you think it is that we are experiencing as that process is unfolding? What is it that we feel?
There are two things that we're experiencing. There's a huge global consciousness explosion, as you know. Millions of people are waking up every day, literally seeing the light.
What does it mean, waking up and seeing the light? Like, how does that play out?
That's exactly what I was referring to earlier, right?
Yeah.
Reaching levels of consciousness, not full consciousness. I don't quite know what that is, but subtly reaching high levels of enlightenment, seeing the lies and the deceptions that have enslaved us.
Do you think they become
enlightened? Seeing the light by becoming enlightened. Seeing through the lies and deception of the governments, the control groups, the media.
Taking their heads out of the sand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you think they're getting more compassionate?
Well, it's as you rise with consciousness, compassion is a natural consequence of that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And not only that, this is why I believe things are so crazy on this planet at the moment. The more we rise in consciousness, the more draconian the oppression needs to become by those who are trying to keep control of this planet.
So when you say there's these two sides, I mean, I think that's also, this whole dualistic idea is that now, like when I'm teaching, when I'm working with people, when we're doing workshops or anything, I'm always saying, look at what you see as the other side. Like, look, if I'm like the teacher of love, and I'm looking at the people that are on the other side that are teaching hatred and war, I always say, let's look at them and remember that those people, whether they're who they are, no matter where they come from, that person is my brother and sister.
Yes.
And just to keep breaking down this divide, that I think that draconian institution in the world now, I think it's basically becoming lighter and lighter. I mean, I don't know if I have seen this maybe too optimistically, but I really do see that the force and power of that draconian side is really becoming invisible. It's loosening its grip.
I think it's becoming invisible to you because you are just elevating yourself so high.
I've got those rose-colored glasses on.
And whatever they're doing doesn't affect you as much as it did last year or the year before.
Because everything is God, everything is divine,
Yes.
it's all one.
But it's critical what you said there, Susie, is because, and this is what I tell people, like with our actions against the banks in South Africa.
Right.
You know, when we were marching on the banks, and I was delivering the memorandums to the bankers, and you know, people marching down the streets, and you know, jail the bankers and hang the bankers, or whatever the people are shouting. Yeah,
Make love to the bankers.
Well, exactly. But the point is that when we delivered the memorandums, the message to them was, we're not here in conflict. We're here to tell you that you're causing great harm to your brothers and sisters. And does your family know what you do? Do your children know what you do to their friends and their families? And I could see that some of them, when I read this out to them, I could see them physically jerk when I asked them, do you know what it is?
Personalized.
Do your children know what you do for a living and how what you do affects their friends and their families?
You're scaring me just saying that.
And exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the message we planted. We're not here to confront you. We're here to plant a seed of consciousness, is what I used with the bankers.
Yeah.
I hopefully for you to realize what you're doing is wrong, and just leave it at that. And I find that since we've done that, there has been an energetic shift.
We have 3 minutes to change the world. What will you tell the world? What is your advice to everybody to bring in this divine state of being?
In Star Trek, the movie, when they were asked, how did you survive? How did you reach these levels of success? And the answer was, we got rid of money. And that's exactly what I've been promoting now since 2005, is a moneyless society. I call it contributionism, a complete move away from anything we've ever tried, because everything we've done as a species has always been based on money, barter or trade or some form of exchange. That needs to go. That's the slave trap, the enslavement trap. So I've been promoting moving away from money, from a money-driven society to a society driven by people, their passions, and their God-given talents. And it's moving into a world of scarcity and hoarding into a world of abundance. Because the moment you remove money from the system, you've removed the hurdle to all progress. Suddenly everything becomes available. How this happens is, for many people, a huge leap, because we are so poisoned by capitalism and the use of money that many people really struggle with that. But let me remind everybody that money was introduced, probably at this stage, my research points that it's the Anunnaki that introduced money as a tool of enslavement. Money did not evolve out of thousands of years of barter and trade. That is the lie that we've been told for so long that most of us now believe it.
So how do we do that just in everyday life? How do we move towards this?
Well, first of all, we need to start talking about it. So start imagining a world without money and how that will work.
Visualize it.
Visualize it. It's not easy, and so I've written a book about it, and it took 8 years of research and experience, and it's called UBUNTU Contributionism, Blueprint for Human Prosperity, and outline how we can move from a money-driven, crazy society into society, united communities driven by the people's passions and God-given talents.
Passion and talent.
And it's for the benefit of entire communities. Not about me anymore. It's about, what can I contribute to my community to benefit everybody?
Us.
Or how can everybody benefit from what I do? And that changes everything. Truly everything. Overnight. We go into abundance beyond our wildest imagination. Now, I know we don't have time to go into that, but I'd really urge the viewers to go and research this, and do not be confused by the lies of the banking industry and the governments that keep us enslaved through money.
Thank you so much, Michael Tellinger. And everyone, please, we'll put up all of the information about Michael's upcoming events and all of your websites and books. And thank you so much for everything you've done for the planet Earth and the universe, I should say. Yeah.
Well, it's our planet, and
it's our universe.
It's our universe. It's our reality, and it's for us to take it back and do with it what we believe, or what we were given as the tools by the divine creator to be divine co-creators.
Yes. Thank you. Love now, everybody.